Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is episode 24 of the FAB podcast on Wisp Sports Radio.
Excuse me.
The FAB podcast is the weekly show brought to you by Females in Athletic Business, for women in the sports business, where we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Kristin Ray, and I'm the founder of Females in Athletic Business and one of your hosts of the FAB podcast. On this week's episode, we are chatting with Dani McSweeney, Inside Sales Representative for the Pittsburgh Penguins, as part of our Young Female Professionals series. Welcome, Dani.
Hello.
So before we get into all about your work with sales within the Pittsburgh Penguins, tell us a little bit about your previous sports-related experience and your journey into the industry thus far, and also tell us about all the hats you're currently wearing.
Perfect. So funny enough, when I wanted to break into the sports world, it was in a completely different realm, I guess you can say. Right out of high school and in high school, I actually worked with our football team as an equipment manager. So after high school, I actually went to West Virginia University, where I thought I wanted to be an athletic trainer. And after a few weeks of that, I kind of realized, like, oh crap, this definitely isn't what I want to do. And I was almost stuck because for me, growing up with sports, I was always on like the team side of things. So I was like, well, nobody wants, a female in the locker room and stuff like that. And I was kind of stuck. But then I guess my eyes kind of opened up and I realized that there was a whole other world to sports, and that was the business world.
Absolutely.
And I had always been a business type of person growing up. So I was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I transferred back home to a school in downtown Pittsburgh called Point Park University, which basically at Point Park, I was in walking distance of the Penguins, the Pirates, the Steelers, and then also our professional soccer team here in Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So it seemed like a really good place to be. And I kind of just jumped right in. And my first semester at Point Park, I started working part-time for the soccer team here, the Riverhounds. And that was my first kind of real experience in the industry on the business side. So I was working in the box office over there, which was ticketing, which was sales, as though I didn't even realize it at that point in time that, that was kind of what I was doing. And then from there, I actually went to the Major League Baseball winter meetings and PBEO job forum. So for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it is basically one big job internship fair and a huge networking opportunity. So there's representatives from every single Major League Baseball team, almost every single minor league baseball team, and they're basically there just looking to fill jobs and internships and network with young professionals looking to break into the industry. So it was incredible. And from there, I actually stepped way outside of my comfort zone, and I took an internship in Florida with Perfect Game USA, which again, for some people that don't know, that is actually the largest amateur baseball scouting company in the country. So I worked for Perfect Game for a summer, and I loved it. I love that side of baseball. It's a little bit different, obviously, than working for a team, but it was kind of cool seeing all these like young kids' hopes and dreams come true and everything like that. And then I came back to Pittsburgh, and actually, funny enough, I accepted that internship in December, and I had my interview with the Penguins in, I want to say February. So I already knew where I was going for the summer, but the Pittsburgh Penguins offered me my part-time job while I was in school as an inside sales representative, and I took it. And I missed us win both Stanley Cups because, funny enough, I went back to Perfect Game in the summer, and the year that we won the cup, 2017, everybody at work actually told me that I had to leave because I basically, needed to go and needed to make sure we won. So they basically sent me away and were like, no, you have to go back to Florida. Like, we're not going to win without you. So,
well, that's so funny because as a hockey fan, hockey seems to be the most superstitious of the sports. So I love that they were like, okay, we'll win without you. So
yeah,
you got to get out.
It was actually like a running joke. And then this year, now that I was full time, they were like, well, I guess we can't really send you away. I was like, no, I'll go. Don't worry about it. But unfortunately, the outcome wasn't what we hoped this year, but that's okay. And
you're wearing a ton of hats right now too. You're not just a busy at work doing sales. There's some other things you're involved with as well, right?
Yes. So on top of working full-time for the Penguins, I am actually in grad school getting my MBA. And then on top of that, I work as a graduate assistant here at Point Park. So I'm kind of an event planner here. I also serve as a mentor to some younger students. But yeah, I'm a very busy person right now.
Well, I think that's a pretty popular thing for women in the sports industry specifically, is to wear a ton of different hats, because we're trying to capitalize on as many opportunities as we can at a time. And then if we dip our toes into mentorship, that's a whole nother hat to wear and another thing to put on our plate, even if it's very rewarding. But so as someone who I started out in the sports industry in sales, on the hospitality side, working with visiting teams. So talk a little bit about why sales for you, and maybe what you think sales has to offer in terms of going into sales versus other parts of the sports business industry, especially for women.
Yeah, so I think for me, sales was something that when I was looking for different part-time jobs and things like that, it was kind of something that I saw everywhere. And I actually had a mentor of my own who kind of told me that if you can take a job in ticket sales, you definitely want to do that, because no matter where you go or no matter what team you're looking for, they're always looking for someone who can sell tickets. Mm-hmm. I never necessarily imagined myself going into sales just because I was, crazy enough, people used to tell me I was like shy and quiet and all this stuff. And now looking back, I definitely was, but I think sales kind of makes you grow and makes you develop as a person. So when I actually got my job here with the Penguins, at Point Park, we had a guest speaker come in, and his title was Senior Vice President of Sales and Broadcasting. And I'm still actually very close with Terry now at work. He basically was like, sales are somewhere where you need to start, because no matter what you're doing, or even if you're out in the sports world or not in the sports world, you are always selling something, whether that is yourself, your team, your organization, you are always selling something. And he was very influential in my job with the Penguins. I basically told him one day, I was like, I want to be you someday. Like, tell me how I get there. Mm-hmm. And he said, you have to start at the bottom. And unfortunately, that is inside sales. And you learn a lot of skills in inside sales. And two, I think that is something that kind of weeds people out of the industry more or less. Mm-hmm. If you're not willing to put in your time and kind of start from the ground up, you're probably not going to succeed in the sports world. And that's just the unfortunate truth. But you can't, walk in one day and expect to be a vice president or a manager. You have to start from the bottom. And I think sales kind of starts you at the bottom, but it also kind of shows you that there are so many different things that you can go and you can do from starting in that sales position.
And that makes a ton of sense. I have a sales background too, and I feel the same way about it. I feel like it developed a ton of skills in me, my time in sales, that I use every day now in my job, working for a team in operations. But without generalizing too much, women are this, men are this, because that's always a hairy place to get into. Mm-hmm. What about women in general would you say are personalities or characteristics that make us, in my opinion, more, I don't want to say more successful than men in sales, but when I was in sales working with other men, some of the stuff seemed to come a little easier to me or more natural. And have you found that? And what about us do you feel like really has an opportunity to succeed in sales?
Yeah, so I work actually in our department in sales. There's only 3 of us at the Penguins. We're also looking to hire someone right now. So if there's anyone out there who wants to start with the Penguins, we have an open job. But there's 2 girls and 1 male that I currently work with. And I think the funny thing is that girls have been told no enough that, when we get that rejection call or we make that call and someone is not happy with us, we're like, all right, on to the next one. And that's kind of not like maybe a great way to put it, but at the same time, it is the truth. I think women handle rejection a little bit better than men, but at the same time, I think women are very, resilient, and they know that they're, again, not generalizing here, but I think girls tend to think of long-term and the bigger picture more or less than right now. So I think when you're in that sales position as a female, you're kind of thinking, I'm not stuck here forever. I have a lot more to do and a lot of other places to get. And I know that's something I think of a lot of the time. But then at the same time, I think women are just very, very, very prone and very well rounded in terms of like networking and confidence and having that enthusiasm that you have to have as a salesperson. And I'm sure there's men out there who are the same way, but I think it's just kind of in our DNA to be, outgoing and enthusiastic, and we want to kind of make those connections. Whereas I'm not sure if men are exactly as open to that, but it's kind of what you need to be successful in as to be a salesperson, is that like enthusiastic and confident mentality. But I think that is the key.
I love that you said, I never, in writing these questions down for you today, I never would have guessed that one of your answers would be that we're just used to hearing no more. And I've not heard another salesperson say that, but that is, I think, a huge part of it. I think that there is a part of the male sales ego. And I'll say it again, male sales ego. I'm not saying every man, but I think there's a part of that is more easily crushed and discouraged and let down every time that they hear no. And the resiliency isn't always there. They're very easily, lose their focus over a loss. And I think that is such an interesting way to put it. But you're right. We, especially if we've worked in sales or worked in sports before, chances are we've heard no a couple of times. And if we're still at it, then we weren't deterred by no. And I mean, that's what you need in sales, is to not be deterred by a no, whether it's to keep it up with that specific customer or client, or just to march on to the next lead. So that is such an interesting way to put it. Now, I know you talk about you're in ticket sales specifically, but talk to us about other sales type roles that most professional sports teams have, because I know it's more than just selling tickets. They're selling suites, they're selling sponsorships. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So at the Penguins, our ticketing department is actually very small, but at the same time, we kind of wear all of the hats at the same time. So in my role as inside sales, I actually handle season ticket holder sales, premium sales, which is the suites, our VIP packages, our luxury, seating, concert seating, everything like that. And then we also have our partnership marketing corporate sales team. And that is kind of, they're insane, honestly, with what they do. I think our partnership sales staff team is one of the best. I'm a little biased, but out there, they do an insane amount. And our partners seem to be the happiest people in the entire world. And I think that is something that people actually don't realize is sales. And that was actually me when I first wanted to kind of get into the industry. Like I said, Terry, who's our VP of sales, that's who I want to be someday. And I was like, that's corporate sales, that's partnership. That's what I want to do. And he was like, well, yeah, Dani, but you have to start somewhere, below that. You can't go in and just march into a company and say, let's do this, let's buy this. You kind of have to start from the ground up. So our partnership team actually works very closely with our ticketing team, because obviously a lot of those partners have season tickets. They, have promo nights that are involved with our season ticket holders and things like that. But I think most sports teams focus heavily on those two groups of sales, because obviously that is their two main sources of revenue, is their partnership, corporate sales, side, and then ticketing obviously as well.
And I want to keep on the top of our listeners' minds that there are sales roles within all of these pro teams, but there are also sales roles within several other parts of the sports industry. We've had on our show a woman who works in sales for some technology companies that cater to sports teams as well. I use a couple of those products at work. And so there are people that have to sell those products. There are people who sell corporate sponsorships for TV networks, for pretty much there's somebody who's selling something for everything you could touch in sports. And so I really do recommend that if you think you have the personality for sales, or even just wonder if you might, I really would recommend just doing some searching online, thinking of the companies that you think might be really fun to work for, and really asking yourselves and asking them, asking their website, what do they have that revolves around sales? Because sales is such a wonderful jumping off point, but sales is something that people make their career on. It's not always just a jumping off point. But I want to you're such a good example because you're somebody who saw an open sales job as a young woman and wasn't scared of it and wasn't, you didn't think to yourself, sales, I've never done that before. I don't know how to do that. That's not for me. And so talk a little bit about the advice you would give to someone else when I hear from young women all the time, oh my gosh, I'm thinking I'm just going to go take a corporate job because the only sports industry jobs that are open are sales. Talk a little bit about how you think you've succeeded so far in your job and why you think that it was the right move and how it might work for you in the future.
Yeah, so when I obviously was like looking at this job with the Penguins, you read the job description for a sales position and it says something along the lines of making outbound phone calls, gathering prospective clients and things like that. And you're like, wow, is that really what I want to do? And you just kind of have to think to yourself, like, how bad do I want to get into the sports industry? And that was kind of the place that I was at. So although my title at the Penguins is inside sales representative, I do so much more than sales because in a professional organization, they don't want you to have one job title and do just that job title. If you can, get in front of someone for an inside sales representative or inside sales anything, basically interview, and you can kind of tell them, this is why I want to be in the industry. This is why I think sales would be good for me. They're 9 times out of 10 going to listen to you and they're going to kind of, want to hear more from you. When I interviewed, which crazy enough to me now, that was like 3 years ago that I did that. I told them, I was 18 years old at the time when I interviewed, 18 or 19. I was really young when I interviewed with the Penguins, but I told them, I have no idea what I want to do, but I know I want to work in sports and I know the Penguins are an organization that I want to work for. And I said, I don't have sales experience. Yes, I have ticket experience from the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, but this is a whole new world for me. And again, most times for a sales position, they're understanding of that because they know that that's a starting point for a lot of different young professionals. And it's not only women, obviously, who say that sales is the only thing they see. I think a lot of men are that way too. They're like, oh my gosh, all I see are sales. And if you want to work in the industry or you want to keep moving forward, you just kind of have to realize that taking that job that might not be your dream job will help you get to your dream job someday.
Whether it's sales or not sales. I mean, we hear this every week on this podcast, that we can't be too good for any opportunity that comes our way, whether it be sales or, some other, job that young people are considering as, not their ideal or not their best or not the highest paying. People really, especially in this industry, really, really do appreciate and respect people who are willing to put their time in, who there's a very big sense of you get what you earn in this industry. So there's something to be said for doing the grunt work and putting some time in jobs that maybe aren't your number one choice. But like I said, I think people, especially women, should really, really open their minds to not only starting in sales, but opening their hearts and their minds to what sales as a career and not just a stepping stone might have to offer. But so you've done work, I think, if I've done my homework. Obviously, you're working in hockey right now, but you said you spent some time in the soccer world. I think you said you worked in football as well. Talk a little bit about the differences of those 3 professional sports, because I know there are women who are maybe they have the choice to pick, which is a really great place to be, or they're just trying to target their searching based on what they think, each industry will be like. So talk a little bit about how those 3 pro sports differed for you.
Sure. So I will say, obviously growing up in Pittsburgh, it's kind of in your blood to be a sports fan, whether or not you want to be that way or not. So I grew up, with the Steelers in my backyard, with the Penguins in my backyard, and the Pirates right there too. And it was always my dream to work for the Steelers. That's kind of why I went with my high school football team and everything like that. When I was in high school, or, even a few years ago when I was just starting at Point Park, if someone would have asked me, what team I would be working for, never in a million years would I have said the Penguins, to be 100% honest. I was a hockey fan, but never did I think that I could get to that level. So with football, I actually find myself, I have loved my time with the Steelers, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I am almost too much of a football fan to work in football, if that makes sense. So I think that's something that people don't realize too when they, want to apply for a job. And I know I necessarily didn't think about it. I was a huge Steeler fan, and I was working every single game, so I was never watching the game. And I think people who want to work in sports think like, oh, you work for a sports team, you get to go to the games, you get to have so much fun. No, you are working all of those games. So you're not in the stands, having fun with anyone. You are running around like crazy. And I think hockey is a nice balance for me, because football obviously is one game a week. And while I think football fans are a little bit crazier, so I was definitely dealing with more, and I found myself a little bit busier during games. Hockey, I think, is a great in-between. There's, 3-4 games a week at most, but they're more relaxed, so you're not like high stressed all the time. And I'm sure in other positions you definitely are. But I think football for me was definitely more stressful, just because the problems that go on during games, and we're dealing with like weather here in Pittsburgh wasn't always great. So it was snowing, it was raining, it was 90 degrees outside. You kind of get everything from that. But for hockey, you're inside. People tend to be, a little bit more well-behaved and well-mannered and stuff like that. So I love football. I would definitely go back if I could, but there's always that thought in the back of my mind that you're not going to be watching these Steeler games anymore. You're going to be working them. So that's kind of what I say to myself almost as a joke, but it's the truth. If you're a huge fan of a team, I would not necessarily recommend, applying for a job for them, because you're not going to see that team. You're going to be working for them, and it's a completely different world.
I totally get that. And I think that's something that not too many people, if anybody, have mentioned on the podcast before, is definitely in the interview phase. If you're interviewing for that team that you've always thought you wanted to work for, maybe that's a question that you ask. If it's not super obvious what your role will be during games, definitely ask that to make sure that you're not, in a situation where you're getting something different than what you wished or what you expected. And also just remember that maybe if the first couple of years working in that role where you're missing the games, that might not always be the case depending on, where your career takes you. Dani, I feel like I could talk to you forever. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. I think you're a great representation of the young women who are a member of this organization and who listen to this podcast, because of how much you've done already in your career, but how much you're putting yourself through to get where you want to be in your career. I respect the heck out of you for all of that. And I thank you so much for being here today. Tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you or keep in touch with you, if they have any questions about sales, or maybe just how they can keep track of the Penguins, since they're kind of a big deal.
Of course. So my email is always open. Like I said, I'm a mentor here at Point Park, so I'm used to kind of having people reach out and have questions. It's really simple. It's my first initial last name at pittsburghpenguins.com. And then I have all social media forms too. So Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to follow me on, search my name and you'll find me. But 9 times out of 10, I'm tweeting or posting photos of like my dog. So if everyone's okay with that, then feel free to follow me.
Well, that's great. And we will make sure to link those social media feeds to the podcast episode when it is posted. But Dani, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
And Wisp Sports Radio can be found on any podcast app. Follow Wisp on social media at Wisp Sports. Please give us a 5-star review on iTunes to help promote coverage of women in sport. To follow Females in Athletic Business or this podcast, use @FAB Sports.org on social media. The FAB podcast is a co-production of Females in Athletic Business and Wisp Sports. Check out Females in Athletic Business at www.fabsportsorg.com. Thanks for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere.